This is a tutorial of how to complete Challenge 5 in your Canada and United States Mapping Lab. Please make sure that you have certain materials in front of you. You need to go to Google Classroom, look at the Challenge 5 Canada and Mapping Lab link, convert it to Notability. I would recommend split screening, having your Notability on your right and this tutorial on your left, and you completing the same tasks that I am doing as I do them. Please pause this video while you get your Notability set up. Now that you have your Notability open, let's survey what you have. You should have 6 maps: your physical feature, political boundaries, climate zone, vegetation zone, your population density, and your economic activity. And we see that with your physical feature, your population density, your climate zone, vegetation zone, your population density, your economic activity. Also notice that as we scroll down on your Notability, you have a graphic organizer that we're going to be looking at. Now we're going to particularly need to pay attention to these locations here. And this is where we're going to be writing down our information. Then as we scroll, we have 3 field photos: field photo 1, field photo 2, field photo 3. And further down, this is where our sample paragraph is going to be going. I'm going to be walking us through each one of these locations or each one of these steps in order to come up with locations through this tutorial. So let's make sure that we're following along with. First thing that we need to do is we need to start working on this graphic organizer and finding these locations on our maps. Now on our maps, you're going to notice as I zoom in that there are 3 dots: 1, 2, and 3. Your job is going to be to figure out, is this location A, location B, or location C based on the coordinates. Go ahead and do that right now. So what you should have figured out by now is that this is location A, this is location B, and that this is location C based on our coordinates. In our graphic organizer, we're going to want to write down what sort of information are we finding from our physical feature map in these locations. So for example, as I zoom in on location A, I'm going to notice that we are in the Alaskan Range near Mount McKinley. And so that's what I'm going to be writing in my graphic organizer. So as I zoom out and I move down to my graphic organizer, I'm going to go to this box in location A, and I'm going to write down the Alaskan Range and Mount McKinley. Next, I need to look at location B. As I look at location B and I zoom in, I see that location B is on the Gulf of Mexico and the Mississippi River in low land. And I can tell that by that dark green. I see that it says the Gulf of Mexico here, and here is my Mississippi River coming down. So that's the information I'm going to want to note there. Gulf of Mexico. Mississippi River. In location C, I see that we are on Great Bean Lake in flat, low land as well. And so that's what I'm going to record in my graphic organizer. So in here I'm going to write Great Bean Lake. and low flat land. All right, let's then move on to our climate zone map. Now, I'm going to look at the climate zone map all at once here, and we'll copy all of it down so that we move a little bit faster. I want you to remember that this is location A, this is location B, and this is location C. We can see that A and C are both in the subarctic climate, and all I'm doing is I'm taking that light purple, I'm reading it down to my key, and using that to figure it out. Now, location B is a little bit harder. All right, I can see actually on this one we're pretty good. This is in a humid subtropical. So I'm just taking this green and I'm noticing that it's the same as this. So now I'm going to write down all of that information in my key or in my graphic organizer. So I had subarctic and humid subtropical. And then in this middle one, where I should have been writing it, is humid subtropical. All right. Next one we're going to, if you need to pause, go ahead and pause for a moment. Make sure you have all those written down. Right now your graphic organizer should have all the same information as mine. And now we will go on to the vegetation zone map. And again, I'm going to do everything all at once and then write it down all at once. So as I go to my vegetation zone map, I make sure that I have location A, location B, and location C. I see that location A is a mix of tundra, ice cap, and coniferous forest. Location C is just coniferous forest. And then location B, if that circle wasn't there, I would notice that I was in that pink zone, which is tropical grassland. And so that's what I'm going to record on my graphic organizer. So we said the vegetation zones for location A was coniferous forest, ice cap, as well as tundra. Location B, we said, was in tropical grassland. And location C was in coniferous forest. Pause the video until you have that all written down. Now let's look at population density. I go to my population density map. Location A, location B, and location C. Now I want you to notice on location B how I put the circle down away, but I also have this line coming off here like that. That line is pointing to the exact coordinate where it's supposed to be. All right, I didn't want to cover that up so you couldn't see it. But as we look at location A, I notice that location A is in this yellow portion. I'm going to take it to the bottom, look at my key here, and I see that that yellow corresponds with under 2, and I see the same thing for location C. But location B is the one that I want to focus on right now, because location B I see is on a dot. So I'm going to take that down to my key, and I'm going to look at this urban population. And I'm going to notice that that dot corresponds with 1 to 4 million people in that urban center. And so that's what I'm going to note in my graphic organizer. So A and C I'm going to do real quick, and I'm just going to say under 2 people per square mile. Same here, under 2 people per square mile. But in this middle B portion, this is where I'm going to write it's an urban center of 1 to 4 million people. All right, last map we got to find information from is our economic activity. So I'm going to go to my economic activity map. And again, I want you to notice how I put the circles with the lines so that you could see what's in and around these areas. I wanted to make sure that I didn't cover that up with my dots. So if I look at location A, location B, and location C, location A is in the middle of that purple, which as I look down here, I see that means that it's hunting and gathering. But I'm also looking at my resource that's there, which is precious metal. And I'm going to note that. Location C is also in hunting and gathering, but I see no resources. And location B is in the middle of forestry with some natural gas nearby. So that's what I'm going to note in my graphic organizer. So my economic activity for A, we said was hunting and gathering. With precious metals. For location C was, or location B, excuse me, is forestry with natural gas. And for location C, we see that it has hunting and gathering and no resources. Now that I have all of that filled out, what I'm going to start to try and do is I'm going to start to try to match the field photographs with, are they location A, location B, or location C? So let's scroll down and let's start looking at some of our field photographs. Now let's start out with field photograph number 1. As I look at field photograph number 1, I'm going to look at certain things here. All right? The first thing that I notice is I see a large amount of trees in the background. I see only one house. I see that there's a lake. All right? And that the weather, or based on what I'm seeing, what I'm observing in this photograph, the trees, the lake, and everything, it appears to be cold. All right? I don't see anything that would suggest tropical or a warm island. And so as I look at this, and I were to break down and I were to say, okay, physical features, climate zone, vegetation zone, population density, and economic activity of this area, I would suggest that the physical feature I should be looking for is a lake. The climate zone that I'm looking at should be colder. The vegetation zone should have coniferous trees. And my population density should be low. And my economic activity, based on what I'm seeing here, I see a lake, and I don't see anything else. There might be forestry because we see trees, but there might be hunting because of the lake. Maybe they're hunting fish. And so on this information, I'm then going to compare to my graphic organizer, and I'm going to see which one does this best match. Well, as I go through, I'm looking and I say, do I see mountains? I don't think I saw mountains in that photo. Definitely didn't see the Gulf of Mexico. But it could be the Great Bean Lake. That seems to make sense so far. But let's look at my climate. Subarctic, colder climate, could make sense. Humid subtropical seems a little bit too warm for that picture. But this subarctic also makes sense. So right now, I'm on, and I'm thinking that it's got to be location C based on these two things. But I want to double check. Coniferous forest, does that make sense? Yes. Under 2 people per square mile? Yes. Hunting and gathering? Yes. So based on what I can see from this chart, this seems to be location C. And so I'm just going to write that here. That seems to be location C based on the information that I found. Now what I'm going to want to do is I want to turn that information into a paragraph. And that's what we're going to be working on in our next portion. So let's scroll down. I know that there's 2 other field photographs. Those are practice for you to work on later on. I want you to still look at them. I would like you to make the chart that looks something like this and try to decide, okay, over here is this location A or B, and write that down on your notability. But for our purposes, we need to make a sample paragraph. And that's what I'd like to be doing with you guys right now. All right, so we're going to start by going through and saying, let me get rid of that. We're going to start going through and saying, okay, the field photograph best matches location C. This is our topic sentence. Now the other things that we're going to need as we go forward is we are going to need evidence and then explanation of evidence. So let's start working on that. Our evidence. What piece of evidence can we use that would then explain this? And so what I want to do is I want to return to my maps, and I want to say, based on the physical feature map, location C is in Great Bean Lake. All right, so it's in Great Bean Lake. And then what I have to do is I have to give my explanation of evidence. I have to explain, what did I see in the photo that makes me think that it is Great Bean Lake? Well, in the photo, we saw a lake which would suggest Great Bean Lake. So we have our topic sentence, we have an explanation, or we have some sort of evidence, and then an explanation of that evidence. Now what I have to do is I have to repeat this process 2 more times. All right? So I want to keep on going, and I want to keep on finding evidence that's going to help me prove that this is Great Bean Lake and is location C. So I'm going to go on to another map. This time I'm going to use, let's see, the vegetation zone map. So here's my evidence. According to the vegetation zone map, location C has coniferous forest. My explanation of evidence. In the photo, we see pine trees, or evergreens, whichever you want to call them, which suggests a coniferous forest. I want you to pay attention that I'm always using this statement all at the end, which suggests. All right? This goes through and ties back in and shows how our explanation of evidence fits our evidence with our topic sentence, that it's location C. I have to keep on tying everything back. Everything has to prove that location C is the correct one. Let's do one map and our tutorial will be done. So I'm going to move all this stuff up. And our last explanation of evidence. All right, so my last piece of evidence according to, again, I have to choose a map to say according to the population density location C has under 2 people per square mile. In my explanation of evidence, I'm going to say in the photo, we see only one building and very little infrastructure. Which suggests low population. All right, thank you for watching this tutorial. Hopefully you now have your notability filled out. I want you to continue making sure that you have figured out each of the locations for the other photographs. You do not need to write another paragraph yet, but we're going to be returning back to this paragraph as a sample paragraph later on in the year.